Jai, quick review. We've been reading about the pregnancy of Diti and at an inauspicious time, because Yapa Muni's, her husband's predictions that she would give birth to demons who would cause difficulties to everyone within all three worlds, big demons. Then the demigod, then because of that prediction, Diti held the semen of Kasyapa in her womb for 100 years, restricting the birth of her children, knowing that they would cause problems. And then finally, the demigods became disturbed because a whole darkness filled the entire universe. Everyone from way up in the higher planetary systems all the way to the hellish planets was disturbed, as predicted. And Brahma explained to the demigods who had come to ask him what was going on, that about how his sons, the four Kumars, had traveled to Vaikuntha, met the doorkeepers, been stopped by them, cursed them to take birth in the material world, and that now they were in the womb of Diti. Thus, the two residents of Vaikuntha, having been cursed, were causing the problems from within the womb of Diti. And last week we read about their birth, their actual birth, how there were natural disturbances, earthquakes, fires, storms, winds, all kinds of unpleasant, not nice nature. And then finally they were born. And we read about how Hiranyakasipu underwent austerities. Just a little introduction of him. In the 7th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, there'll be a much more detailed explanation of him. But then there, at the end of chapter 17, there were descriptions of Hiranyaksha, the demon, and how he had also performed austerities and penances and obtained boons from Lord Brahma that made him almost immortal, at least to the point where no being within this universe could kill him. So in his enthusiasm to fight with someone, he entered the ocean, the Garbhodaka ocean, and went deep into the watery regions and came to the abode of Vibhavari, the abode of Varuna, and challenged him to fight. And Varuna declined. He said, "We've become too old to fight," knowing that Hiranyaksha was such a powerful adversary. He said, "But there is one person that can give you a good battle, and he will kill you. So you should find out Lord Vishnu, who has assumed the form of Lord Varaha." So this is where we are now in the narrative. So let us switch over to the texts and see what happens. This is Srimad-Bhagavatam, June 2022, lessons 3 and 4, chapter 18, the battle between Lord Boar and the demon Hiranyaksha. Samapriya, you want to take over?
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back. This is certainly a transcendental forum. We see actually when we go through this reading, we'll be able to see how, and Prabhupada talks about the symptoms of demons taking birth in the world. And we see what's happening in the world today with so many natural disasters. What do we think that indicates? Hare Krishna. Okay, Tisha, would you like to begin for us today?
Yes, Mataji, thank you. So this is Srimad-Bhagavatam 3, chapter 18, verse 1 and 2. Maitreya continued, "The proud and falsely glorious Daitya paid little heed to the words of Varuna. Oh dear Vidura, he learned from Narada the whereabouts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and hurriedly betook himself to the depths of the ocean. He saw there the all-powerful personality of Godhead in his boar incarnation, bearing the earth upward on the ends of his tusks and robbing him of his splendor with his reddish eyes. The demon laughed, 'Oh, an amphibious beast.'
Go on, read the next one.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 18, 3-5. The demon addressed the Lord, O best of the demigods, dressed in the form of a boar. Just hear me. This earth is entrusted to us, the inhabitants of the lower regions, and you cannot take it from my presence and not be hurt by me. You rascal, you have been nourished by our enemies to kill us, and you have killed some demons by remaining invisible. O fool, your power is only mystic, so today I shall enliven my kinsmen by killing you. When you fall dead, with your skull smashed by the mace hurled by my arms, the demigods and sages who offer you oblations and sacrifice in devotional service will also automatically cease to exist like trees without roots. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The example of an uprooted tree mentioned here by the demon is very significant. Devotees accept that God is the root of everything. Their example is that just as the stomach is the source of energy of all the limbs of the body, God is the original source of all energy manifested in the material and spiritual worlds. Therefore, as supplying food to the stomach is the process to satisfy all the limbs of the body, Krishna consciousness, or developing love of Krishna, is the sublime method for satisfying the source of all happiness. The demon wants to uproot this source because if the root, God, were to be checked, the activities of the Lord and the devotees would automatically stop. The demon would be very much satisfied by such a situation in society. Demons are always anxious to have a godless society for their sense gratification. According to Sridhara Swami, this verse means that when the demon would be deprived of his mace by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only the neophyte devotees, but also the ancient sagacious devotees of the Lord would be very much satisfied.
Very good. I have one question for you, Tisha. What happens when one satisfies the source of happiness? What happens to you?
We are satisfied.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's what this whole purport is about. By satisfying the source of happiness, we become satisfied. Very good. Thank you. Okay, let's go on with Faye. Would you like to read the next one?
Hare Krishna. Good morning, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.18.6. Although the Lord was pained by the shaft-like abusive words of the demon, he bore the pain. But seeing that the earth on the ends of his tusk was frightened, he rose out of the water just as an elephant emerges with its female companion when assailed by an alligator. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mayavadi philosopher cannot understand that the Lord has feelings. The Lord is satisfied if someone offers him a nice prayer, and similarly, God is dissatisfied if someone decries his existence or calls him by ill names. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is decried by the Mayavadi philosophers who are almost demons. They say that God has no head, no form, no existence, and no legs, hands, or other bodily limbs. In other words, they say that he is dead or lame. All these misconceptions of the Supreme Lord are a source of dissatisfaction to him. He is never pleased with such atheistic descriptions. In this case, although the Lord felt sorrow from the piercing words of the demon, he delivered the earth for the satisfaction of the demigods, who are ever his devotees. The conclusion is that God is as sentient as we are. He is satisfied by our prayers and dissatisfied by our harsh words against him. In order to give protection to his devotee, he is always ready to tolerate insulting words from the atheists.
Thank you, Faye. What is this actually? Could you put back the text, Mati? This wonderful description shows us that the Supreme Lord is a person. What do you have to say about that?
I'm overjoyed that the Supreme Lord is a person, because that means devotees can have a relationship of exchange with him, rasas exchanged with him. And it behooves us and brings us great joy to please the Lord and do pleasing things for him.
Very good. Wonderful. And when we try to do that without him and try to please other people, regardless of Krishna, we don't really, do we find the satisfaction that we're looking for? I mean, do we find that intimate relationship? There's always something that'll last for a while, but when we try to have that depth of a relationship with another conditioned soul, what happens?
The relationship of the devotee with the Lord exists transcendentally. It is eternal.
Yeah.
Any relationship that we seek on the material plane is temporal. It is temporary. It will not bring full and complete satisfaction.
Right.
It's doomed to fail.
It is doomed to fail. But what about association with devotees?
Association with a pure devotee would be wonderful. It is proven as a pathway to success, following the pure devotee and the acharyas, the saints. That's the way back home. They've mapped it out.
Right. Very good.
Devotee association is good too, Mataji, because it allows us to praise the Lord, to exchange empowering conversations about the Lord rather than speaking of mundane topics. So our speech is employed in praising and serving the Lord in that way, as are our thoughts. And when they're dovetailed in his service, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And we can tell because we're becoming filled, just like the examples that Prabhupada was giving about taking food to the stomach and everything else gets satisfied, or watering the root of the tree. Thank you. Thank you, Faye.
I have a question that maybe open up to the devotees present. If Krishna is absolute, then praising him or decrying him, being angry at him or loving him on the absolute plane, how is that non-different, but he has feelings at the same time? That he's pleased when someone offers him prayers or glorifies him, but displeased when not. Anybody?
Nanda, what do you think? Nandaji, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just had to come closer. I was thinking similar, but it's according to the lesson that he wants to teach. He employs different aspects of his supremacy. Yes, on the absolute platform, he's detached, and he wants the living entities to love him, but he doesn't force them to love him. But at the same time, on a more intimate level, when he manifests himself to people who are inclined to know and serve God, then you actually see that he's a person. He's not a mundane person like you and I, but at the same time, he has those personal traits, and it's according to which lesson he wants to present and which facet of his personality he presents. That's my take on it. I'm sure there's others.
Okay. What about the energy that he employs to have a personal relationship? What energy is that?
Internal as opposed to external.
Yeah, well, there's so many internal energies. This is a special one. I'm just tricking you.
Yeah, go ahead. So tell me which one it is.
Okay, who knows? What's that internal energy that allows Krishna to actually be dependent on his devotee, where in fact he's absolute? Yoga Maya. right? Yoga Maya. That allows him to reciprocate, otherwise we're all little teeny weeny nothings. What does he care with us? But there's a special kind of love that he has for each one of us, and that can advance and that can become manifest and develop.
I'm interested also to hear Sesha's idea about
say,
that difference between being absolute, an absolute entity where everything is one and equal in one sense, but at the same time he has feelings. And it actually mentioned in the purport and in the verse itself that he tolerated, he was hurt by the shaft. Like, I mean, he's there, he's in this rasa with his eternal associates, in the mood of chivalry and battle and ghastliness and wonder and all these things. So he's actually hurt by the abuse, is what the purport is saying, but at the same time he's absolute. So what's your understanding, Sesha?
Well, it's a little bit similar to what Nanda was saying. The position, say the position of a leader, for instance, a leader may take criticism from this side, that side, praise from this side or that side, but has to maintain a sort of a stoic presence, not swayed wildly by praise and not depressed by criticism. So it's almost like an official position to not be affected by praise or blame. But that contrasts to the personal relationships that public leader may have, like with close family, where in a secure or a confidential, loving environment, he can express how he was hurt. I mean, reading this purport, I was surprised to hear how the intimate expression that he was actually hurt by the words of Hiranyaksha. But that's something that has to be tolerated in the public forum, but in a more confidential relationship can be expressed. That's how I was taking it when I read it.
Mandantar? Thank you, Sesha. Mandantar has a question here.
I wanted to say that even that hurt is pleasurable in a certain way. And I think that his relationships with his 1,800 wives while he was on the planet is evident of some of that. You know, he's absolute, but he had different relationships with each one of them. And some of them treated him not harshly. I mean, you know, everybody loved him, to say the least. But like what one example is, like one of his wives, her dad died, and she went right to Krishna, even though he was on pilgrimage to somewhere else, and demanded that he address the situation right away. Well, another wife didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, even though she found, you know, so he had different relationships with each one of them. And so even in this text, even though he was hurt by it, it was some sort of chivalrous pleasure. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. That's it was such a bomber, I think you're referring to. That's very interesting. Madhurya Lita has also something to say. Madhurya?
I was just thinking of the Bhagavad Gita, and how in the Bhagavad Gita he says that everyone is dear to him, all the relationships, but then one who is a friend is especially dear. So it was like telling Arjuna that that. And so yeah, he's equal to everybody, but at the same time, if someone is doing something favorable and doing it with love, then he has a special inclination.
Well, what about Jai and Vijay's position? They are his personal servants at the gates of Vaikuntha, and he loves them, and they didn't even want to come to the material world, but he said, go because I want to fight. And this whole thing came about. So they are absorbed due to Yogamaya in some kind of a far out chivalrous ras. So I like what Manvatar said about there is some kind of transcendental pleasure in this, because he's not dealing with ordinary people. In fact, if somebody's going to be a big demon, it has to be one of his devotees to be killed by Krishna. Nanda?
I just wanted to add, since Madhurya Leela was quoting from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that one should tolerate happiness and distress, and one should tolerate the insults from others and not be disturbed, and this and that. And yet there's many exhibitions of him rectifying, like when you mentioned Satyabhama, rectifying the insults that Satyabhama's father gave to him, et cetera, et cetera. So I stand on, it depends on what lesson he wants to teach. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Or what relationship he's involved in. How's that too?
That's good too. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. It looks like we're going to go on now. That was beautiful. Seshaji, you want to continue for us and read the next two slides?
Okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 18th chapter, text number 7. The demon who had golden hair on his head and fearful tusks gave chase to the Lord while he was rising from the water, even as an alligator would chase an elephant. Roaring like thunder, he said, "Are you not ashamed of running away before a challenging adversary? There is nothing reproachable for the shameless creatures." Purport. When the Lord was coming out of the water, taking the earth in his arms to deliver it, the demon derided him with insulting words. But the Lord did not care, because he was very conscious of his duty. For a dutiful man, there is nothing to fear. Similarly, those who are powerful have no fear of derision or unkind words from an enemy. The Lord had nothing to fear from anyone, yet he was merciful to his enemy by neglecting him. Although apparently he fled from the challenge, it was just to protect the earth from calamity that he tolerated Hiranyaksha's deriding words.
Do you want to say something about this?
Yeah.
Pati?
Let's cover some of the points in the purport rather than just going to the next.
Okay. Seshaji?
Well, he was very conscious of his duty, stands out to me, that despite, as an example for everyone and for all time, if we maintain our duty in the face of different circumstances, pleasurable or unpleasurable, but we maintain our duty. He's showing that example here by not being carried away or immediately trying to retaliate the insulting words of Hiranyaksha.
All right, perfect.
Okay, and another thing maybe could be that he's really getting into this. He's getting into it. He's actually enjoying this, and he's getting into this ras, this chivalrous ras with this horrendous demon. It's just lots of lessons and lots of ras. Anyone else have something to say about that?
It does have to be Ras, because he's the one who wanted to come to this world to fight, and so he's not neglecting any part of the provocation that Hiranyaksha is providing.
Right. Very good. Go on, Prabhu. Very good.
Read the next one.
Yes, please.
3:18:8. The Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled him, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. Report. Those who are demons cannot understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead floated the earth on water. But to devotees of the Lord, this is not a very wonderful act. Not only the earth, but many millions of planets are floating in the air. And this floating power is endowed upon them by the Lord. There is no other possible explanation. The materialist can explain that the planets are floating by the law of gravitation, but the law of gravitation works under the control or direction of the Supreme Lord. This is the version of Bhagavad Gita, which confirms by the Lord's statement that behind the material laws or nature's laws, and behind the growth, maintenance, production, and evolution of all planetary systems, behind everything is the Lord's direction.
Wow. So what does that mean, Seshaji?
Well, this is one thing about Krishna consciousness, the science of Krishna consciousness, and this particular pastime, is that nothing is taken for granted. Everything is explained. It'd be easy to just skip over, that the Lord empowered the earth to float. You could just say that the earth was placed on the ocean and it was floating without trying to make sure that it's thoroughly understood that the Supreme Lord is behind everything. We could just take it, well, okay, we know things float, so the earth is floating, let's move on. But no, first it's noted that God is involved here and in everything, making sure everything is understood to be directly the result of his intervention. Nothing sort of automatically happens.
Right. Prabhupada speaks about, sorry?
I was going to say the question can be raised that the earth had sunk into the bottom of the water, and then he brought it up to the top of the water. Wouldn't it just sink back down again? So obviously some change had to have taken place. Otherwise, you bring something, like if you take a bowling ball that's at the bottom of the sea or the bottom of some water, and you pick it up to the top of the water and you let it go, it's going to sink right back down again. So he did something to the earth to make it float on the water. Also, another point is that in the purport, it said that the scientists say that gravitation is the pull that holds all the planets in space and in orbit. But while Sesha was reading it, I'm thinking that when a spaceship goes into outer space, then what happens? Everybody in it becomes weightless because gravity, once you're out of the atmosphere of a particular planet, it's just open space and there's no gravity. That's why things just float around up there. But obviously there's some sort of pull because everything stays in orbit around different planets, satellites, and different space stations and all the planets. It's incredible how Krishna holds everything together. And there's no acknowledgement of that by atheist people. It's foolish.
Very sad. That's the truth. That's why there's suffering in the world, because people are not seeing this is all Krishna's plan. Krishna is behind everything. Everything that's going on, Krishna is there. Thank you. Shall we go on to the next slide? Madhurya, can you read? Madhurya Leela?
Not for a while.
Okay, Nandaji, you want to take over? Nanda.
I'm unmuting. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. 3:18:9. The demon who had a wealth of ornaments, bangles, and beautiful golden armor on his body chased the Lord from behind with a great mace. The Lord tolerated his piercing ill words, But in order to reply to him, he expressed his terrible anger. 3:18, 10 and 12, 10 through 12. The personality of God had said, indeed, we are creatures of the jungle, and we are searching after hunting dogs like you. One who is freed from the entanglement of death has no fear from the loose talk in which you are indulging, for you are bound up by the laws of death. Certainly, we have stolen the charge of the inhabitants of Rasatala and have lost all shame. Although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time because, having created enmity with a powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. You are supposed to be the commander of many foot soldiers, and now you may take prompt steps to overthrow us. Give up your foolish talk and wipe out the cares of your kith and kin by slaying us. One may be proud, yet he does not deserve a seat in an assembly if he fails to fulfill his promised words.
Wow. Go on. Go on.
Text 13 through 18. The demon, being thus challenged by the personality of Godhead, became angry and agitated, and he trembled in anger like a challenged cobra, hissing indignantly, all his senses shaken by wrath. The demon quickly sprang upon the Lord and dealt him a blow with his powerful mace. The Lord, however, by moving slightly aside, dodged the violent mace blow aimed at his breast by the enemy, just as an accomplished yogi would elude death. The personality of God had now exhibited his anger and rushed to meet the demon, who bit his lip in rage, took up his mace, and again began to repeatedly brandish it about. Then, with his mace, the Lord struck the enemy on the right of his brow. But since the demon was expert in fighting, O gentle Vidura, he protected himself by a maneuver of his own mace. In this way, the demon Haryaksha and the Lord, the personality of Godhead, struck each other with their huge maces, and each enraged and seeking his own victory.
So there's no purpose in these ones that are included, but there were purports in some of these verses. Do you want to say something about it? Mainly, I wanted to ask you, fear and death, fear and death. With the line that the Lord spoke to Hiranyaksha about those who are not afraid of death do not speak in this way. So we see that there's a lot of fear of death. Can you speak about that?
Well, you hit it right on the nail on the head. There's a lot of fear of death when you're in the bodily concept of life because you think you're going to die. But when you come out of the bodily concept of life and realize that you're eternal spirit soul and you're not your body, then when you get realized in that, then you're not afraid.
That's it. You're not afraid of anything. And
Yeah.
we see that a lot of people who like to talk, they're all about talking.
Yeah, they're all about talking. And then he says, that's what Krishna, that's one of his favorite lines when he fights. He said, you're just talking bold words, but stop talking and show your prowess.
There you go. There you go. Anything else you want to say about these verses, Nandaji?
Not particularly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on then with Manvantara. You want to read? I think you should turn off your picture, Manvantara, because there might be a disturbance.
But just in terms of the text that Mother Nanda just read, I thought the Krishna was taunting, they were taunting each other, obviously, but I thought Krishna was saying that this Prabhu here, this demon, was not afraid of death because of his boons, kind of like, so that's why he's talking so much crap. So I thought that was what was going on. That's not what happened.
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Patti? You're smiling. Patti, why don't you respond to that?
I had to unmute.
You have to unmute.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Well, and the point is, like,
each other, obviously.
Yeah, and whenever the Lord says something, it's filled with transcendental knowledge. So this thing about those who speak like that, are only displaying their fear of death. If someone is fearful of death, that means he's not self-realized. So you're right. This is not another poke. But of course, the demon thinks he's protected. No one's going to kill him.
Right.
Actually, he's pointing out here that that one who's freed from the entanglement of death has no fear from loose talk in which you are indulging.
Oh, so
you
he's
are
talking
bound
about
up
himself.
by the laws of death. Yes.
Right. He's not afraid, but he's insulting his partner. Yeah, you're fearful. I'm not.
Exactly.
There's a sense of humor. Okay. Very good. Let's go on.
Text 19 through 20. There was keen rivalry between the two combatants. Both had sustained injuries on their bodies from the blows of each other's pointed maces, and each grew more and more enraged at the smell of blood on his person. In their eagerness to win, they performed maneuvers of various kinds, and their contest looked like an encounter between two forced bulls for the sake of a cow, O descendant of Kuru. Brahma, the most independent demigod of the universe, accompanied by his followers, came to see the terrible fight for the sake of the world between the demon and the personality of Godhead, who appeared in the form of a boar. Purport. One should not consider the Lord to have a body of an ordinary boar. He can assume any form, and he possesses all such forms eternally. It is from him that all other forms have emanated. This boar form is not to be considered the form of an ordinary hog. His body is actually full of yagna, or worshipful offerings. Yagna, sacrifices, are offered to Vishnu. Yagna means the body of Vishnu. This body is not material. Therefore, he should not be taken to be an ordinary boar. Brahma is described in this verse as Surat. Actually, full independence is exclusive to the Lord himself, but as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, every living entity has a minute quantity of independence. Each and every one of the living entities within this universe has this minute independence, but Brahma, being the chief of all living entities, has a greater potential of independence than any other. He is the representative of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and has been assigned to preside over universal affairs. All other demigods work for him. Therefore, he is described here as Swarat. He is always accompanied by great sages and transcendentalists, all of whom came to see the bullfight between the demon and the Lord.
Very good. One question, this minute independence, it seems like the living entity sometimes becomes a little bewildered, not understanding his minuteness of independence. So we see a manifestation of that with Hiranyaksha.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this?
He didn't look at that chart we saw when we were talking about the atoms and the appearance, the Manvantaras and all of Lord Brahma's life. Apparently, he didn't realize how insignificant he is on that chart.
Yeah. Generally, that's the disease of the conditioned soul.
Right.
We do not realize how insignificant we are. Thank you.
One of the points that we discussed during the forums was the secondary rasas. There are 5 primary and 7 secondary rasas. And what's happening here is that at first they see one another. First they heard about one another. First Hiranyaksha only heard about Vishnu from Varuna. And that's when his attention to that personality started to develop. And then now he actually has found him. He's seeing him, and they're starting their exchanges. And we see that those secondary rasas of anger and chivalry are starting to increase. one of the things that no one mentioned, which I was surprised at, was the loving exchange on the Battle of Kurukshetra between Krishna and Bhisma. This was a similar situation where Bhisma was firing his arrows, he took a vow. I'm either going to kill Arjuna or I'm going to make Krishna break his vow. So he was fully absorbed in trying to kill Arjuna, to the point where the Lord who had taken a vow not to fight, broke his own promise, got down off the chariot, picked up a wheel, and ran at Bhisma. And at that time, Bhisma just raised his hands and he's like, all right. So their exchange was extremely tasty. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in those comments on those verses, points out that each of the arrows shot by Bhisma, which actually pierced the Lord's body, he appreciated them just like a lover appreciates little bites by her beloved or his beloved, between two loving partners, like pinching and biting one another. So the Lord, who wanted to fight, we should understand this underlying pleasure that he's experiencing throughout the entire event as it churns in these secondary rasas.
Very good. That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Gopa, do you want to read? Gopaji?
Yes, Haribo.
Haribo.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:18-21 through 23. After arriving at the place of combat, Brahma, the leader of thousands of sages and transcendentalists, saw the demon who had attained such unprecedented power that no one could fight with him. Brahma then addressed Narayan, who was assuming the form of a boar for the first time. Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord, this demon has proved to be a constant pinprick to the demigods, the Brahmins, the cows, the innocent persons who are spotless and always dependent upon worshiping your lotus feet. He has become a source of fear by unnecessarily harassing them. Since he has attained a boon from me, he has become a demon, always searching for a proper combatant, wandering all over the universe for his infamous purpose."
Go on.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:18-24 through 28. My dear Lord, there is no need to play with this serpentine demon, who's always very skilled in conjuring tricks and is arrogant, self-sufficient, and most wicked. Brahma continued, my dear Lord, you are infallible. Please kill this sinful demon before the demoniac hour arrives and he presents another formidable approach favorable to him. You can kill him by your internal potency without doubt. My Lord, the darkest evening which covers the world is fast approaching. Since you are the soul of all souls, kindly kill him and win victory for the demigods. The auspicious period known as Abhijit,
Yes, Abhijit.
which is most opportune for victory, commenced at midday and has all but passed. Therefore, in the interest of your friends, please dispose of this formidable foe quickly. This demon, luckily for us, has come of his own accord to you, his death ordained by you. Therefore, exhibiting your ways, kill him in the duel and establish the worlds in peace.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So this reminds me of something, Gopa, of the Agasura Leela, where the Balaram, everyone was covered by Yogamaya, and Krishna also was looking at the fantastic nature of his adversary Agasura. What do you think of these verses that you just read, Gopaji?
Well, the demigods were just like, let's go. You can do anything. you're the Supreme Lord, you know, just by thinking about it, you can kill him. But, you know, this demoniac force is, night is approaching. And when demons have more power, so let's get it over with before that happens. And, you know, we're all here rooting for you. Let's go.
They're getting worried, right? They're getting worried. So
Yeah.
everybody's covered by Yoga Maya, thinking, oh no, the Lord is going to become defeated. It just really reminded me of Aghasura, when everyone, and Krishna's like appreciating how fantastic Aghasura is, and everybody's walking into his mouth, and he's creating this whole thing, and he's just watching it. Krishna just, he's an enjoyer. He is the supreme enjoyer. So he's getting off on all of this stuff. Anyone else have something to say about this?
I have a question, just a question.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, just while I try to understand. So if we say that Krishna is Varaha is covered, you know, by Yoga Maya. So when Brahma comes and kind of pleads with him, get on with it, you know, you got to take this guy down. Does Varaha even know? Varaha, does he, like, is the Yoga Maya so complete that he's taking that advice of Brahma and not realizing that he's Krishna? I mean, I feel so strange asking that question.
Why? That's a good question. It's a really good question. Who wants to answer that? Sesha?
I was hoping you call me.
I love Sesha. Come on. I long to hear your words of wisdom.
Me too.
I don't know the answer actually to the question. It's a good question.
Oh, okay. He's just saying that, but now let's hear. Patti, could you say something?
Yes, we covered it last week. The famous example, the most commented upon example was when Krishna was a little boy and he stole the butter and Mother Yasoda was running after him. So it's described there in the commentaries, which can be applied in principle to all the different forms of the Lord during his incarnations, is that Krishna, what is those verses in the Damodarastakam? It says he shivered in fright and his pearl necklace shook. He was crying. He was running out of fear of his mother. It's not that he's just like an actor playing a part. He becomes so totally absorbed in that bhav with his mother that she's covered thinking he's her son, and he's covered thinking that's her mother. And he's actually enjoying that persona and fully absorbed in it to the point where he's not thinking about his omnipotence and his all the universes are in his mouth or anything. He's actually in fright. So similarly, when the Lord is fighting with a demon, even her Lord Nrsingadev, Lakshmi Devi, all the different demigods he was so angry, no one could stop him. No one in the whole universe could do anything until finally they sent Prahlad. And when he bowed down, then the Lord, he has to be totally absorbed in that. Otherwise it doesn't play out as exciting for anyone.
Right.
Yes. So there's this called Icha Shakti. It's a power that fulfills the Lord's most inner desire through the activities of his internal potency. So we shouldn't think that he's covered by a similar potency as us when he's in Maya, but it's his own internal potency which manifests so that his innermost desires are fulfilled.
Okay, before I call,
Nanda's house.
I know, but I have to say this before I forget. Even though I wrote it down, I could forget too. There's two things. There's rasa, which is relationship, and tattva, which is the truth and the absolute and realization of the philosophy and the thing that carries everything. So the whole thing is for Krishna's pleasure, right? So this rasa, this feeling, it's like that's what the whole thing is about, the whole creation. Of course, this is very rasikic, which means relationship, that in this battle, he is juicing it because he is really, that is the whole thing. That is the goal of everything. That is the manifestation of his real heart, to experience and to realize these relationships, like with Bhisma, with Arjuna when he was totally covered, with the cowherd boys when they're fearful of Aghasura, and with Jaya and Vijay. There's no make-believe. He is absorbed, he is Varaha, he is powerful, and he is fighting with this very powerful demon who was empowered by him anyway. But this whole thing is rasa, it's love, it's based on love. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but that's the way I feel. Now, a pure explanation by Nandaji.
No, that's a really good point. Thanks for that. The rasa and the tattva, that's a really good point. But just a technicality, what you're explaining there and what Prabhu is also explaining about how Krishna's consciousness, he becomes absorbed in what he's doing. You know, he's thinking he's a little boy and he's afraid of his mother, etc., etc. That's the Sanskrit for that is called mugdata, that Krishna's consciousness becomes condensed. That's just a technical term, but I remember Burijan Prabhu saying that. I think it's in Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comments. Mugdata, that his consciousness becomes convinced and he's thinking, this is who I am. I thought,
Yeah,
mugdata.
that's perfect. That's beautiful. That would actually coincide with this Rasika thing, would it not? He has to think that's who he is in order to play the part perfectly, and it's not even playing, or to manifest that part of himself.
Yeah,
this is
and
very,
that's
very cool.
And that's how he relishes rasa. And if you notice, the Lord, he doesn't like mediocre rasas.
No, nothing mediocre about him. It's completely extreme.
Stretch it to the extreme.
Yes.
Extreme love, extreme hate, extreme fear, extreme everything. So sometimes when we're getting tested, we can think, back off. But that's what he's doing. He's pulling out the love. Okay, Hare Krishna.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Regarding that, good segue. I wanted to point out one point in the text here. Here it says, my dear Lord, this demon has proved to be a constant pinprick to the demigods, the Brahmins, the cows, and innocent persons who are spotless and always dependent upon worshiping your lotus feet. One of the things that the Vedas don't generally expand upon very much is the pain and suffering and the difficulty that the people of the normal people in the world are undergoing. The earth fell into the ocean and it was at the bottom of the ocean. So the question has to be asked, what happened to everybody who was living on the earth planet? How much terror they must have undergone when the whole thing tilted on its side and fell into the world and they all died. What to speak of, this demon terrorized all three worlds. He took over the entire universe. So I don't know why they don't expand on it more, but it appears that everybody was constantly suffering for years and years together because of this demoniac force. So sometimes, as we're experiencing in the world today, due to mismanagement and difficulties, people suffer a little bit. We're suffering the results of demoniac influences on this planet in Kali Yuga. So what to speak of having a demon such as this? It just magnifies the pleasure and the potency of the Lord himself to come and save everyone.
If I could just say one thing, my understanding is that we only the conditioned soul, this whole world is based on suffering and misery. This is how we're taught. That the little bit relief, okay, but it is the essence of this place is suffering, and the Vedas are there to reduce the suffering, to help people to understand their eternal nature. The suffering is already being done. Everybody, I mean, if you don't know you're suffering, then Krishna comes on even heavier. I mean, we're suffering and suffering. That's what the whole world, that's my understanding. And someone else can comment on it. That's it. No, we don't really need to be taught more than the material energy is teaching us, that lays it on us, suffering. You think you're happy, then finally a soul says, wait a second, in a delirious, desperate agony. And then he hears something from the Vedas. That's why the Vedas were produced.
Actually, just to respond to that though, Sanama, in this particular circumstance, the the amount of suffering caused by the demon is magnified. It's not just nature suffering. It's like, because he's been empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's like even more so.
So all of the suffering that we're experiencing now, who's looking at it? Who's actually in the background? We just read that in the purport, controlling the whole thing. The material world is here to inflict suffering upon the living entity, and hopefully that we'll wake up. I mean, I think we all know about our own suffering. I don't know, maybe I'm carrying it too far, but that is the thing that brings us to our knees, and then we can hear about Krishna due to this horrible suffering of the world. Okay, let's go on now with Vaishnavi, would you like to read? Are you even there? She isn't feeling so well today, so we'll just wait because we're starting a new chapter. And how about Anita? Would you like to read? To begin the chapter for us? Hello. Okay. Okay. How about Ian? Ian, would you like to read?
Okay, Hannibal, can you hear me now?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Thank
you.
Okay, chapter 19, the killing of demon, Hiranyaksha.
Okay, good.
Okay, 19, text 1. She Maitreya said, after hearing the words of Brahma, the creator, which were free from all sinful purposes and as sweet as nectar, the Lord heartily laughed and accepted his prayer with a glance laden with love. Purport. Not sure I can pronounce the Sanskrit.
Nirvyalika. Nirvyalika, is that right?
Nirvyalika.
Yes.
Okay.
Nirvyalika.
Okay, the word Nirvyalika is very significant. The prayers of the demigods or devotees of the Lord are free from all sinful purposes. But the prayers of demons are always filled with sinful purposes. The demon Hiranyaksha became powerful by deriving a boon from Brahma, and after attaining that boon, he created a disturbance because of his sinful intentions. The prayers of Brahma and other demigods are not to be compared to the prayers of the demons. Their purpose is to please the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Lord smiled and accepted the prayer to kill the demon. Demons who are never interested in praising the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they have no information of him go to the demigods, and in Bhagavad Gita this is condemned. Persons who go to the demigods and pray for advancement in sinful activities are considered to be bereft of all intelligence. Demons have lost all intelligence because they do not know what is actually their self-interest. Even if they have information of the Supreme Personality of God, they decline to approach him. It is not possible for them to get the desired boons from the Supreme Lord because their purposes are always sinful.
Very important. What can you say about that, Ian?
Okay, as with Hiranyaksha, he wants to become immortal, and all, number of requests that nothing Lord Brahma had, but by the arrangement of the Lord, those requests came into being, but the Lord, just for his downfall. And it says here that the devotees, the Lord accepted Brahma's request, but they say the difference between demons and demigods is that demons don't know about the Lord, and they usually ask for some sinful purposes, for example, to become immortal, to not be killed, to do a number of things. So that's the difference between the prayers of the demigods and the prayers of the demons.
Yeah,
and the Lord.
Who do they ask for these things?
Yeah, they go to demigods, and it is said in Gita, it is condemned because eventually it's by the mercy of the Lord that it is is provided. But to go to demigods as they are the person who give the boon, they say it is ignorance, because they're actually just the servants of the Lord.
Right,
So rather than thinking about Lord, they think that demigod is the one who give them the boons.
right. Very good.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, shall we go on to the next slide? I'm just going to try again with Anita. Are you there? I don't know if she's here. Let's see. No. Vaishnavi? All right. Well then, Tisha, would you like to read the next slide?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:19, verse 2 through 7. The Lord, who had appeared from the nostril of Brahma, sprang and aimed his mace at the chin of his enemy, the Hiranyaksha demon, who was stalking fearlessly before him. Struck by the demon's mace, however, the Lord's mace slipped from his hand, and he looked splendid as it fell down whirling. This was miraculous, for the mace was blazing wonderfully. Even though the demon had an excellent opportunity to strike his unarmed foe without obstruction, he respected the law of single combat, thereby kindling the fury of the Supreme Lord. As the Lord's mace fell to the ground and a cry of alarm rose from the witnessing crowd of gods and rishis, the personality of Godhead acknowledged the demon's love of righteousness and therefore invoked his Sudarshana discus. As the discus began to revolve in the Lord's hands, and the Lord contended at close quarters with the chief of his Vaikuntha attendants, who had been born as Hiranyaksha, a vile son of Diti, there issued from every direction strange expressions uttered by those who were witnessing from airplanes. They had no knowledge of the Lord's reality, and they cried, "May victory attend you. Pray dispatch him. Play no more with him." When the demon saw the personality of Godhead, who had eyes just like lotus petals, standing in a position before him, armed with his Sudarshana discus, his senses were overpowered by indignation. He began to hiss like a serpent, and he bit his lip in great resentment.
Very good. Let's go on. Faye?
Verses 8 through 14. The demon, who had fearful tusks, stared at the personality of Godhead as though to burn him. Springing into the air, he aimed his mace at the Lord, exclaiming at the same time, "You are slain!" O saintly Vidura, while his enemy looked on, the Lord in his boar form, the enjoyer of all sacrificial offerings, playfully knocked down the mace with his left foot, even as it came upon him with the force of a tempest. The Lord said, "Take up your weapon and try again, eager as you are to conquer me." Challenged in these words, the demon aimed his mace at the Lord and once more loudly roared. When the Lord saw the mace flying toward him, he stood firmly where he was and caught it with the same ease as Garuda, the king of birds, would seize a serpent. His valor thus frustrated, the great demon felt humiliated and was put out of countenance. He was reluctant to take back the mace when it was offered by the personality of Godhead. He now took a trident, which was as rapacious as flaming fire, and hurled it against the Lord, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, even as one would use penance for a malevolent purpose against the holy Brahmana. Hurled by the mighty demon with all his strength, the flying trident shone brightly in the sky. The personality of Godhead, however, tore it to pieces with his discus Sudarshan, which had a sharp edge rimmed, even as Indra cut off a wing of Garuda. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The context of the reference given herein regarding Garuda and Indra is this. Once upon a time, Garuda, the carrier of the Lord, snatched away a nectar pot from the hands of the demigods in heaven in order to liberate his mother, Vinata, from the clutches of his stepmother, Kadru, the mother of the serpents. On learning of this, Indra, the king of heaven, hurled his thunderbolt against Garuda. With a view to respect the infallibility of Indra's weapon, Garuda, though otherwise invincible, being the Lord's own mount, dropped one of his wings, which was shattered to pieces by the thunderbolt. The inhabitants of the higher planets are so sensible that even in the process of fighting, they observe the preliminary rules and regulations of gentleness. In this case, Garuda wanted to show respect for Indra, since he knew that Indra's weapon must destroy something. He offered his wing.
Oh, very beautiful.
Actually, I'd like to know, Stacia.
Hati, you have to unmute. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, my understanding is that when you were younger, you went to a military school, and in the Vedas, there's often discussions of the honor and integrity of proper combat. Is that still manifest today? I mean, with drones, unarmed, unmanned machines that go and drop bombs and kill other people, it just seems so foreign to the actual purity of true combat.
The chivalry that such exchanges evoke, the feelings are personal combat. I think that when you get into like impersonal weapons, which hurl bombs hundreds of miles at their targets, don't really give the opportunity for such exchange of being in a position where, just like here, the mace was dropped and left one vulnerable, and one can appreciate sort of stepping back and honoring the combat in a one-on-one situation. But weaponry these days take all that out of battle, or at least most out of it. There's probably some exchanges that take place in hand-to-hand combat like that, but you don't hear about that in the news.
Oh my God. The plight of the world. It is a miserable place. Thank you, Stacia. Do you want to continue reading? And thank you, Faye, for that. Come on.
Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 19, 15 through 16. The demon was enraged when his trident was cut to pieces by the discus of the personality of Godhead. He therefore advanced toward the Lord and, roaring loudly, struck his hard fist against the Lord's broad chest, which bore the mark of Shivatsa. Then he went out of sight. Hit in this manner by the demon, O Vidura, the Lord, who had appeared as the first boar, did not feel the least quaking in any part of his body, any more than an elephant would when struck with a wreath of flowers. Purport. As previously explained, the demon was originally a servitor of the Lord at Vaikuntha, but somehow or other he fell as a demon. His fight with the Supreme Lord was meant for his liberation. The Lord enjoyed the striking on his transcendental body, just like a full grown-up father fighting with his child. Sometimes a father takes pleasure in having a mock fight with his small child. And similarly, the Lord felt Hiranyaksha's striking on his body to be like flowers offered for worship. In other words, the Lord desired to fight in order to enjoy his transcendental bliss. Therefore, he enjoyed the attack.
Everybody's getting really into the drama of this. We should actually record this and make like a video just for all the people in this forum, just because everyone's so into this. It's so beautiful. Okay. Why don't you read this next one too, Sage?
Okay. Text 17. The demon, however, employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yoga Maya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. Purport. The fighting enjoyment of the Supreme Lord with his devotee, who had been converted into a demon, appeared severe enough to bring about the dissolution of the universe. This is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the wavering of his little finger appears to be a great and very dangerous movement in the eyes of the inhabitants of the universe.
Krishna. Okay, let's go on now with Nanda. And unless, Sesha, do you have something to comment about that?
No, nothing in particular.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a discussion at the end. Nandaji, would you like to read?
Sure. Text chapter 19, verses 18 to 22. Fierce winds began to blow from all directions, spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. Stones came in volleys from every corner, as if thrown by machine guns. The luminaries in outer space disappeared due to the skies being overcast with masses of clouds, which were accompanied by lightning and thunder. The sky rained pus, hair, blood, stool, urine, and bones. Oh, sinless.
Wardala?
Yeah.
Wardala? Oh.
Okay, Midori, we hear you.
Oh, sinless Vidura. Oh, sinless Vidura, mountains discharged weapons of various kinds, and naked demonesses armed with tridents appeared with their hair hanging loose. Cruel and savage slogans were uttered by hosts of ruffian yakshas and rakshasas, who all either marched on foot or rode on horses, elephants, or chariots. The Lord, the personal enjoyer of all sacrifices, now discharged his beloved Sudarshan, which was capable of dispersing the magical forces displayed by the demon. Purport. The Lord is described here as Tripat, which means he is the enjoyer of three kinds of sacrifices. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord confirms that he is the beneficiary and enjoyer of all sacrifices, penances, and austerities. The Lord is the enjoyer of three kinds of yajna. As further described in Bhagavad Gita, there are sacrifices of goods, sacrifices of meditation, and sacrifices of philosophical speculation. Those on the path of Gyan, yoga, and karma all have to come in the end to the Supreme Lord, because Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate enjoyer of everything. That is the perfection of all sacrifice.
Wow. Nanda, can you speak about something in those verses?
Well, it's just interesting. In the previous descriptions, when it was talked about the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, it was talking about how there was fire all around and trees fell down without a blast of wind and different phenomena that we can relate to in the world today, you know, flooding, fires everywhere, et cetera, but here now we've got an added things of raining pus, blood, hair, stool, urine, and bones, and how rocks were being thrown. So far, at least lately, we haven't experienced that part yet, but it's probably still to come in Kali Yuga. But Prabhupada brings it all together and says, ultimately, Krishna's the enjoyer of everything. So Haribol.
Oh, so many different kinds of sacrifices satisfy him, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nandaji. All right, let's go on with Manvantara. Would you like to read?
Text 23. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiranyaksha. She recalled the words of her husband, Kasyapa, and blood flowed from her breast. Purport. At Hiranyaksha's last moment, his mother one second, I'm sorry. His mother, Diti, remembered what her husband had said. Although her sons would be demons, they would have the advantage of being killed by the personality of Godhead himself. She remembered this incident by the grace of the Lord, and her breast flowed blood instead of milk. In many instances, we find that when a mother is moved by affection for her sons, milk flows from her breast. In the case of the demon's mother, the blood could not transform into milk, but it flowed from the breast as it was. Blood transforms into milk. To drink milk is auspicious, but to drink blood is inauspicious, although they are one and the same thing. This formula is also applicable in the case of cow's milk also.
That's a very interesting point. The love of a mother, no matter how demoniac, it's a connection. Everyone loves their child, even if the child is so demoniac. It's a phenomenon. Anyone else have a comment on this before we try to finish these up today? Okay. Let's go on. Gopa, could you read the next one, please?
Okay, let's see. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:19-24. When the demon saw his magic forces dispelled, he once again came into the presence of the personality of Godhead, Keshava, and full of rage, tried to embrace him within his arms to crush him. But to his great amazement, he found the Lord standing outside the circle of his arms. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The demon's attempt to measure the Supreme Personality of Godhead is significant. The demon wanted to embrace him with his arms, thinking that with his limited arms, he could capture the Absolute by material power. He did not know that God is the greatest of the great and the smallest of the small. No one can capture the Supreme Lord or bring him under his control, but the demoniac person always attempts to measure the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord.
On to the next one. Read the last one, then we'll have a discussion.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:19-25-28. The demon now began to strike the Lord with his hard fists, but Lord Adhokshaja slapped him in the root of the ear, even as Indra, the lord of the Maruts, hit the demon Vritra. Though struck indifferently by the Lord, the conqueror of all, the demon's body began to wheel. His eyeballs bulged out of their sockets, his arms and legs broken, and the hair on his head scattered. He fell down dead, like a gigantic tree uprooted by the wind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It does not take even a moment for the Lord to kill any powerful demon, including Hiranyaksha. The Lord could have killed him long before, but he allowed the demon to display the full extent of his magical feats. One may know that by magical feats, by scientific advancement of knowledge, or by material power, one cannot become equal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His one signal is sufficient to destroy all our attempts. His inconceivable power, as displayed here, is so strong that the demon, despite all his demoniac maneuvers, was killed by the Lord when the Lord desired, simply by one slap.
Power of Krishna. Okay, I think that's the last one. Can you speak something about this, Nandaji? I mean, Gopaji?
Well, just what Prabhupada said, he could have done it really quick, but but then going through the aspects of what we've been reading the whole time, Krishna is desiring this intense desire for fighting. So the devotee is reciprocating, trying to do all his, or like it says, trying to do all the magic. It didn't work because Krishna is can't be controlled. So I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling here.
No, it's true. What you're saying is absolutely true. And another one is Rake Krishna More Krishna Rake. That means that whoever Krishna wants to kill will be killed. And if Krishna doesn't want to kill someone, that person will not be killed. So this is the power of Krishna. Let's have a discussion before we end.
Actually, one point that I thought was beautiful was in this section where it's describing how the demon tried to embrace him and crush him, but he found the Lord outside the circle of his arms. And then in the purports, Prabhupada's talking about how unlimited the Lord is. So similarly, Mother Yasoda, when she grabbed the ropes for tying the cows and pulled them all together, it was just 2 inches too short. So then she asked her friends, get some more rope, get some more rope. And they added more rope, and they added more rope, and they added more rope. And no matter how much they added, still it was 2 inches too short. So this mystic power by the Lord to employ like that beyond anyone's reach is part of his nature. But because her love was so dominant, then finally he agreed to be tied up, whereas in this circumstance he didn't.
Yeah, it's all through love, right? We can't expect Krishna
Yes.
to respond if
Right.
it's not.
It can't be forced.
No, he cannot be forced.
But he does become subordinate to love. He is
Yeah.
controlled by the love of his devotees.
Yeah.
I have a question about that illustration that was just there. I'm not sure how I feel about that illustration. So warlike, as if warlike countenance and bulging muscles are necessary to vanquish the demon like Hiranyaksha.
No.
Also, it's described that he had hooves, not feet.
But of course, Krishna doesn't need any muscles to extinguish someone and defeat someone. But
The reason I chose this one was because it shows the firmament and his, it had a little more of the unlimited nature of the Lord when this person tried to embrace him. That's kind of what captured my attention with this particular art.
Okay, does anyone else, is that okay, Sesha?
Yes,
Okay.
just a comment.
Anyone else have something to add to this profound discussion or any questions? Oh, there's Manmataraji.
Okay.
Yeah. And Ian too. Okay. Manmatar.
I thought it was.
You gotta shut off the picture. We can't understand you. Shut the picture. Yeah, good. Again?
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that, and very appropriate that Krishna slapped him. You know what I mean? Because he's the youngest one, he's the youngest brother. And his behavior was just so obnoxious. It's just that towards the end there, Krishna just slapped him. But I didn't know what the significance were at the root of the ear. And it didn't say if it was right or left ear. So sometimes, you can say, well, because he's so hard-headed, because Lord Brahma described him as a pinprick. So that means he wasn't listening to any flipping thing. So then when Krishna slapped him at the ear, the root of the ear, it would be interesting to know if it was the right ear or the left ear. But still, the point is, he just wasn't listening. So I don't know what that significance is.
Demons generally don't listen. Is that true? Demons don't listen. They're not, why tell them anything? They're God. So we have to I guess. Pati, you have something to add to that?
No, not in that circumstance. Nothing was said, so it's hard to say.
Ian?
Yes, Mataji. Just Prabhu's reference to Bhisma Dev's Rasa with Lord Krishna. Actually, I thought about it, but I don't know. I didn't remember to put it on the forum. You know, I was thinking, you know, difference between Bhisma Dev's interaction with Arjuna and Lord Krishna, and you know, Hiranyaksha's interaction with Lord Vara. So actually, I thought about it, but I forgot to post it on the forum.
I liked the forum you did present, Ian. It was very nice with the synonyms of the different words with those rasas. That was very clear. That was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks much. I thought about it, and I'm saying that in a fight, there's so much things, and anger has so many different words that you notice. And, you know, indignation, I thought about, let me check and see. And wow, you know, so many different words that, yes. So
Yes,
for a fight,
very
actually.
appropriate. Thank you for that.
Yes. Yeah, thanks so much. Hare Krishna.
Manvantara, are you okay with that answer? Or, you know, there are sometimes that, you know, Krishna is very bewildering. You know, we're only conditioned souls and we're only allowed to understand so much. We got to chant some more, then maybe more. We'll understand more next week. We'll chant a lot and then we'll purify our hearts. Okay.
Before we do close, I want to kind of update everybody. What I did was next week, this upcoming week, like tomorrow, there's I'll post the final few verses and glories of hearing this pastime. And then because it's the end of the month and the pastimes will be finished, I thought it appropriate to review the entire third canto, since we're going to be stopping our sessions for a while. So what I did was go back and create a simple outline of the different verses. So what we'll do next week during the Zoom is we'll cover the end of this pastime and chapter of Lord Varaha. And then the next lesson, which will be 6, posted on Wednesday or Thursday, will cover the first 4 chapters of the third canto, going all the way back to when Vidura first left home and met with Uddhava. So that will be next week. Then the following week, which will be lessons 7 and 8, will cover the remaining chapters that we did when when Vidura met Maitreya, Maitreya's descriptions of the creation. Then the final lesson 8 will be from the time he starts the appearance of Lord Varaha up to the end. So we will have a Zoom meeting on July 2nd. It's a Saturday and doesn't show up in the software on the course materials because it's another month and everything goes by month. But I wanted to let everybody know that we're going to be doing that. And if you'd like to attend, it would be wonderful to have your association. And that way we can kind of review everything that we've read since last October up until now. And I'm finding it extremely enlightening, enlivening, and clarifying of what's going on in the whole context of the narration of Srimad-Bhagavatam.
I think Manvantara had a question, and please forgive me, everyone. And I have to leave now. See you next week.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry.
Okay, Mataji. One last question, because you mentioned it, and I wanted to know if you can cover it as well. When Vidura was traveling in the very beginning, when we were mentioning, because I missed a couple of the Zooms, where he was going to the holy places, and you were mentioning how the community lived among, lived their lives according to the deities in those communities where Vidura traveled, and you were going to do some pilgrimage comments on that. And I was curious because in your wife's book, in your wife's book, she mentioned that you also have a book called Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. And in an attempt to do some summer reading while we were off, I was curious if Vidura's pilgrimage is in that book. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm asking.
No, Vidura is similar to Balaram. Remember when Balaram left the palace. Also, he didn't want to take part in the Battle of Kurukshetra, so he left. Then he went to Namasharanya and killed Ramaharshana Sutta, and then the sages recommended that he go on pilgrimage to show by example how by going on pilgrimage one becomes freed from past sin. So no, my book was specifically on the 84 square miles of Vrindavan where Krishna performed his pastimes, and then another one on Jagannath Puri.
So if there's time, I don't know if you're including it in our review then, Vidura's pilgrimage to those places.
Yeah, unfortunately, Manvantara, there's so much. We're going to do 18 chapters in 3 weeks, and that's just too much material. It's pretty much just an outline to give everybody sort of a remembrance of what was going on.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for your association. It's always most relishable.
Yeah.
Jai.
Okay.
Manchakalpatavischa,
Vacha,
Vasidhuvyata,
Kivacha,
Patitanam
Patitana.
Bhavanabhyo, Vaishnavaya Namo.
Yeah.
Ananta
Hare
Sutta
Krishna,
Vaishnava
Padma.
Jai.
Have a good
Jai.
week. Hare Bo.
Jai
Hare
Namo.
Bo.
Haribo.